Allegiance in a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And again, I'd like to repeat this moment of silence in honor of Barbara Capalbo. Thank you.
I recommend that minutes relating to the privacy of students and their records, approval of home instruction request, and reinstatement of home instruction remain sealed. So,
Second.
Those in favor? Sorry. Unanimous, thank you.
I didn't see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
There were 10 votes taken in executive session. The first one was executive session minutes of October 22nd, pending legal. There were 10 in favor and 2 abstained, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. The second vote was executive session minutes of October 22nd, Town of Barrington et al., with 10 in favor and 2 abstaining, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. Third vote was executive session minutes of November 13th, collective bargaining with ESP, 10 in favor and 2 abstaining, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. Fourth vote was executive session minutes of October 22nd, collective bargaining with ESP, with 10 in favor and 2 abstaining, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. 5 was executive session minutes of October 22nd, homeschool requests, with Chambers, 10 in favor and 2 abstaining, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. 6 was executive session minutes of October 22nd, reinstate homeschool instruction, 10 in favor and 2 abstaining, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. Number 7 was executive session minutes, October 22nd, appeal for student transportation, with 10 in favor and 2 abstaining, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. Number 8 was executive session minutes, October 22nd, appeal of denial of request for alternative learning plan, with 10 in favor and 2 abstaining, with Chambers, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor, and Champlin and Pouliot abstaining. Number 8 was homeschool requests today, with 11 in favor and 1 abstaining, with Chambers, Champlin, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Pouliot, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor, and Phelps abstaining. And number 10 was return to open session, 12 in favor, with Chambers, Champlin, Chapman, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Phelps, Pouliot, Purcell, and Reynolds, all in favor.
Thank you.
that brings us to recognitions. Tonight, I want to recognize and extend our heartfelt gratitude to Catherine Giusti, as she will chair her final meeting this evening. Her unwavering commitment, leadership, and sense of humor have been instrumental and appreciated. Catherine has invested thousands of hours ensuring that Charahoe remains a district where students and families can take immense pride. Her unwavering focus on excellence, collaboration, and community-centered decision-making has left an indelible mark on our schools and the lives of our countless students. While this marks the end of her time on the committee, we are grateful that her dedication to Charahoe continues, and we look forward to her ongoing partnership in the community. Thank you for your exceptional service and for championing the values that make Charahoe thrive.
Thank you.
No, Chair.
Can I be recognized? Sure. Okay, let me just say that Catherine started as a parent liaison, and she was at every meeting for several years before she joined the committee, and she's been fabulous. A boon. I reiterate everything that Gina said, and a boon to Charahoe. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next up for congratulations are the boys high school cross country. The Charahoe boys cross country team finished 13th overall on Saturday, November 2nd, at the state championship. They met at Pontiac High School. Tom Golis was the top finisher for the Charahoes, for Chargers in 58th. 17:36 was his time, over 3.1 miles. Other scores for the Chargers were Isaac Graham, placed 73rd, 18 minutes and 4 seconds. Cameron Eldham, 75th, 18 minutes and 6 seconds. Ben Steer, 78th, 18 minutes and 9 seconds. And Charles Allenson, 89th, 18 minutes and 24 seconds. Congratulations to all. Our high school varsity girls soccer team, Charahoe edged out Cranston West in the D1 quarterfinals. Ryan Denacor scored 10 minutes into the second half, and Ashley Simmons added insurance in the final 5 minutes to lead to the number 4 seed Charahoe in a 2-0 Division 1 quarterfinal victory over the number 5 Cranston West. However, the D1 semifinals at Rhode Island College's Alumni Field was the final game for Charahoe senior captains Ryan Denacor, Emily Brown, Ashley Simmons, Charlie Edmonds, and Ella Jachowski. Although the Chargers ultimately fell to Cumberland in the semifinal game, Coach Brianna Godbout was quoted in the Wesley Sun saying, "They all showed great leadership throughout the season. They set the tone in every practice and game and pushed their teammates to play at a high level. This group of seniors will certainly be missed." Congratulations to our seniors. The next one is our girls' middle school soccer championship team. Now, this was an interesting, to say the least. Our girls played a wonderful game. I was there. They scored first, and then Lincoln scored, and then we went into penalty kicks. Due to unfortunate adult errors, the game was ended before they could kick the final penalty kick. Therefore, Lincoln was determined to be the champion. However, in our eyes, our girls are co-champions, and we are really proud. So at minimum, we told the Interscholastic League, after our appeal was denied by the Principals Coalition, that they deserved, at minimum, their sweatshirts that were corrected. So I see that many of you are wearing those. Yes, good job. And I wanted to say you all played a wonderful season. You should be very proud. You held your head high, and you really came out on top. And I think everyone knows that in our eyes, you will always be the champions of that game. Congratulations. And if I could have, and actually, I see Mrs. Martin's going to help me do this, and Ms. Drake, Mr. Camella is going to take a photo. If you could help our girls get a nice little circle. You guys know how to do a team photo. We can get a nice little photo with all your sweatshirts. That was the minimum they could do. So that's it.
Sweatshirts look great.
Spread out a little bit. Good.
So cute.
You spread out a little bit more
Yeah.
from over here. Want to see all those pieces.
In the back, you guys.
Those in front, kneel down. Kneel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, neat, yeah.
There we go.
There we
Kneel
go.
down.
Direct.
The front row.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
There it is.
Good picture.
Okay,
Nice.
ready? Well, here, go Chargers. 1, 2, 3. Go!
Our next recognition is our girls' high school volleyball team. Charahoe High School girls volleyball competed all the way through D1 to the quarterfinals, but ultimately fell to North Kingstown 25-19. Lily Baxter finished 5 kills with Sonia Beasley, added 4 blocks and 2 kills for the Chargers, 8-14. We are very proud of everyone's hard work this season. Congratulations.
Now it's time for public forum. Anybody wishing to speak? He'd ask you to sign up here, but certainly if you have a burning desire, I'm not going to stop you if you'd like to speak even without signing. Mr. Marone, you're first.
Chris Marone, Hope Valley. I'm a father of 5. I have 4 kids in the school system, so I know, I just wanted to say thank you to Catherine for good job that you've done. And everybody else here, just have a good year. And welcome our new member next month. And just thank you, Catherine.
Thank
Great.
you. Thank you.
No.
Okay. So the next person on public forum is me. So I wanted to take a minute to thank all of you. I started this 11 years ago as the parent liaison, and like Donna referenced, I came to every meeting and I wrote a little newsletter to try to get people more engaged in what was happening with the school committee, because it was really tough to do that way back then. And I think we've come a really long way with trying our best to make sure that parents and community members understand what's happening with the school committee. It has really been an honor to serve on this school committee for the past 8 years. And I haven't been perfect, certainly. I have had my stutters and missteps, but I hope that you all understood the intent with every decision that I made here was to try to keep Charahoe moving forward and make this the best school district that it can be. We're never all going to agree, but to me, that's the symbol of a great democracy, that we have the space to disagree. And I hope my colleagues and Mrs. Teft, as you come aboard, everybody takes the time to listen to one another, because I will always say there's a lot more commonality to be found in what we want our school to look like than there is dissent. So thank you, really, truly. It has been an honor. Thank you.
Okay, so the first item is policy, transportation policy. This policy was a review. The policy subcommittee did review it, as did the transportation subcommittee, and it is back. Overall, it was a legal review to ensure the language matched the current practices and the current needs. I recommend that the policy be approved.
Does somebody want to make a motion to approve it?
Oh, we make a motion to approve policy.
And then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Larry?
I don't remember reviewing this, and I don't believe Pat and Greg did.
Oh, I thought you said you did.
I had a so this was not, so, okay, so we're gonna walk that back. This was not discussed by the transportation.
Oh, I apologize. I thought, Mr. Lozano, I thought you said, can you make sure you note that it was reviewed by the transportation subcommittee?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it
Well,
did go before the
It
policy.
so it went through the policy subcommittee.
And I believe this should, after policy, shouldn't it come to us and for review?
Typically,
No,
the-
the
Or you say no?
transportation is really for appeals and for the contracts.
Okay, okay.
But again, it doesn't stop you from, if there's something you want to change, you can do it tonight.
Right.
And you can also table it for another night if you want to do that as well.
So typically what we'll do is we'll take questions from the committee first, and then we'll go to the public, okay? Are there questions from the committee on this policy, or any changes you'd like to see made to it? The changes are in red. Craig?
So getting to number 2A, number 1 of A, students enrolled in kindergarten 1/4 of a mile from their home. Like I said earlier, state policy is they should be picked up in front of their house. So I don't know, we can't overrule the state policy, right? State law.
So.
Could
the-
someone investigate whether that is true or not before we accept this?
Sure, it was reviewed by legal. So I don't
I'm
believe
just
there's
telling-
anything in the state law that says kindergarten, we actually do pick up at the houses, but the state law has guidance, but not law about kindergarten. But we, as a group, put the kindergarten, so just so some practices, I know, and Michelle's here too, our kindergartners, we do make sure they get picked up at the home. It's not a state requirement, but we do. And the other thing we do is that we always try to put the youngest child, the stop closest to the youngest child's house in the neighborhood. Is that accurate, Michelle? Yes, and we fall under a variance, you know, we carry a variance so that.
So can you just come up to the, thank you, just so the public, that's okay.
The district or we fill out a variance form every, month. So you would have to go over a 10%, like monitor, like the monitors need to be on board for at least, if they fall over 10% in 3 months, then we fall back to home stops. Other than that, they fall under the walk.
I just have a question. Obviously, if you have someone that's living on a main road for a kindergarten, like Route 3, 138, is that what the policy saying? They can walk a quarter of a mile down the road?
No, they're picked, so, all of our stops and routes are reviewed by the police departments, so then they get reviewed, and then they give Michelle the okay if there's any concerns. They've been pretty standard, if there's any concerns, parents will reach out, or they'll call Michelle, and then if, we have to follow up, typically the appeal comes to me, but kindergartners, since I've been here, they've been picked up at their homes or right by the closest area we can get to based on the roads.
So one of the issues that I have with the policy that was put forth is that, you know, I understand that with cutting the buses, there was an issue with that, and now you're no longer allowed to have students that go to 2 different homes. And
That's not
that's not correct?
Not if it's on the same bus route.
right, so the way you stated it, so if they're on the same route, you can go to a different house on that route.
Okay, so where's
Can't- It's the, assigning a student to 2 different buses to 2 different routes.
Okay, so basically, if you have a student who comes from a family where, let's say, they basically have shared custody, our policy is to now not allow that. So if a judge or a magistrate or issues an order that says that, you know, dad has to have custody on these particular days and mom has custody on these days, that we're essentially not going to accommodate that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we don't, judges can say all kinds of things that are not required for us to do. One is the custody. So, for example, we don't have to accommodate custody orders. In the past, with the budget, if we were able to accommodate parents, we've always made that allowable. I mean, Michelle and I, you know, there's all kinds of ways. We have emergencies sometimes, but overall, judges can't mandate that. So what happens is we do the best that we can. So typically what we've said to families, and I think it impacted probably a handful of families this year, about 10, that if they could not come to an agreement about which stop they wanted, because they can change, they can say, I want this stop this year, and then next year they can do a different stop. If they could not come to an agreement, that they should discuss that with their family, the family court. They would have to go to discuss that if they could not come to their own agreement.
Okay, so then there's nothing in our policies in particular that allow for any sort of, you know, the parents or the family to, you know, to go through an appeal process beyond what is already stated, where they have to go through the transportation subcommittee and then the school committee themselves?
They can absolutely appeal any decision. The transportation subcommittee comes a part of that decision. So first it goes to the principal to work out with the bus yard if they can make any arrangements, if there's a concern. If it's that level of, I have 2 different buses, that typically comes right to Mr. Zenian, who oversees transportation. He will then make a decision. If a parent isn't happy with Mr. Zenian, it comes to me. If they don't like my decision, it comes to you. If they don't like your decision, it goes to RIDE.
Okay. Okay, so then I guess the other part of this is there a way to adjust the transportation policy or send it back to the policy committee to revise some of the language in there so that maybe there can be certain accommodations met in order to accommodate these 10 families or these rare circumstances? Because we have students that don't ride the buses and that exceed this 10-day rule of where if they're not on the bus for 10 days, their seat can get pulled. What if you had a family that offered up their seat, for example, on one of the buses? Would that be permissible?
No, because it would still be inequitable. So you can't say, oh, well, you got lucky. Somebody you know gave you a seat. and you are not as so lucky. So the way to do that is to, one, ridership has increased across the district. More and more families are asking to use the bus. That's a statewide thing, by the way. Mr. Zenni and I, actually, Ms. Davis was with us at the League of Cities and Towns meeting, and so ridership across the state is up. Obviously, we know that bus expenses are up, gas, everything is up. So the only way for us to be able to be mindful about and to do that is to increase the busing budget. Allow us to be able to do that. Because the reason why we couldn't do it is because we don't have the funding for the buses.
Okay, thank you. Catherine and then Craig.
Yes, I would like to see it rewritten in a fashion that if there was space available, that we wouldn't have it hard and fast that we're saying that we will never allow a student to have two buses, just hard and fast. That if there was space available and we could accommodate it, that we would do it, rather than just have a blanket policy that just takes it off the table.
So on page 3, I believe it gives some of that leeway to us already. Or page 4, maybe. Page 2, let's see. So Catherine, where are you reading that you feel it didn't?
It isn't really anything specific, it's just addressing, the situation that if there were a situation where there was space available, that we wouldn't just hold it, that we have this policy that you can't have two buses. So no, I'm not addressing particular language that's in there now. I'm
Oh, I
just
see.
proposing the fact that I'd like to see language that would make it allowable that there could be two buses if the space is already available.
Where would you,
Understand?
what would
No,
be your
it's-
recommendation where? Just so I'm clear.
I
Where
don't
would you
have
want that?
I don't have any recommendation as to where to put it. I'm just proposing the idea that we eliminate the hard, fast, can you hear me? That we eliminate the hard, fast rule that you can't have two buses. Do you understand that? What I mean, Gina?
Yeah, basically you would like something like, to give me the authority that if space is available, this is where it gets tricky, because now I just want to be clear. You will have space unavailable on some buses and space available on
Right.
others.
So not everybody's gonna get.
So you may have an issue with the equity of it. So I would defer to John and to ask him that question. So then we would just table this for tonight so I could ask. Because I know you all have already heard him speak at the meeting. He's going to tell you that you've allowed for inequity.
So again, that's the key word, if there is space available.
So now again,
Yes, you're not getting.
so for example, if I'm in Hope Valley, which has less students right now, I'm more likely to get that option because there's less students on that bus than if I was headed to Richmond.
Right, but you're not targeting like a favoritism, it's just the way it happens to be.
And I understand that.
So I'm just more or less saying, why would you penalize one party? So Linda seems like she's chomping at the bit to explain it better to me, so I welcome that.
I just raised my hand.
If you, I'm gonna let you
Yeah, but
jump leapfrog,
yeah, but
unless
Craig
Craig,
had
can
kind
you
of
explain
started.
it better?
I was gonna talk about.
Okay, go ahead, Linda.
I'm sorry, I guess what from the superintendent's perspective is that if I was a parent of say a Richmond child and I wanted to have a second bus stop, and I found out the Hope Valley child got the second bus stop, or the second bus, assigned to the second bus, I would probably appeal that, how come they were able to get it and my child can't? And you would have to say, well, there was room on the bus.
Right,
I'm not sure I would
exactly.
accept that, but that's that's
So,
what she's saying, yeah.
so that's exactly what I would say. You would look at the policy, and the policy says that if there's room available, we will accommodate it. And to me, it's very simple. See, there was room available, there wasn't for you. So that's it.
Oof. Sorry, my gut reaction to that is, oof, that's a tough one.
Yeah,
to swallow.
again, I'm
But
more
I-
just like somebody's getting penalized.
Yeah.
And they could be accommodated. Why wouldn't we eliminate a hardship from a family if we are able to without putting another bus on the
Understand what
route?
you're saying.
So I
know,
feel
but I
very
think we all know what you're
I
saying,
feel
yeah.
strongly about that. So
Okay.
I would make a motion that we ask John Anderson if we could insert language to that effect.
I can do that, and I just want to be mindful, like, when we do the budget, then you should be adding money for buses because there's just
But this was.
a minimum
work-
of 2, because the ridership is increased.
Yeah, this was working within what we already have, my request. So the motion would be that we would ask John
So
Anderson.
John gave you all that advice already, but I
Well,
can-
he dealt with it on an equity basis. That was his main point, but my point was in that meeting is that, I didn't see it that way because, if that person happened to be in a different situation, but the policy is gonna reflect that. And so you just bring them back to the policy. So again, I make a motion that we ask John.
There's a motion on the table.
Yeah, so there's a motion on the table, so why don't we complete the conversation? So we have a couple of things. We can table it, and we can send this back to the policy subcommittee. We table it, we send it back to the policy subcommittee, then you all can have that discussion. Anybody who wants to be present for that discussion,
And I can ask John to attend.
right? John can attend, you can flesh this out a little bit more, and then it will come back before the committee. So, is there,
I second
They
that
can-
motion.
they can come.
Yeah, I think you have to make the first.
Oh, can I make the motion to do that?
yep, you can make a motion to table.
I make a motion to table it and send it back to the committee.
It's in the motion.
I
yeah.
rescind
No
my-
one seconded her.
so
All
I-
right.
She still made a motion.
Oh, we did?
She did, you're right. So
So
if
I
you
have
would,
to rescind my, so I rescind my original motion.
And
who was
And
the
I-
second?
And I second it.
So Linda,
Right.
rescind the second.
Okay, so now it's.
And I second it.
So procedurally, just so everybody understands, in essence, what we're doing is we're not continuing this conversation. We're gonna table it. We will have, if the motion to table passes, what we'll do is this will go to a subcommittee and everybody will have an opportunity to speak at that subcommittee meeting. The other option is you can email school committee members if you have suggestions for the policy. So I don't want you to feel disenfranchised. I'm just trying to explain it procedurally. So there is a motion and a second to table this. All those in favor?
Can we clarify,
Second.
table it to send it to the back
Right,
to the
yes,
policy
right.
subcommittee?
Correct.
And just to say too, like, we've had a meeting, when the policy subcommittee reviewed it, we then had a meeting that was an executive session that I think has changed a lot of our views. And that is part of why I think a lot of folks are feeling hesitant to approve the changes now.
Sure. Okay, those in favor of tabling? And those opposed, did you get all those? Yep. Those opposed to tabling? Thank you. All right. That is
Angela, are
tabled.
you good? Yep.
That is tabled, thank you.
Okay, I'm just waiting for the numbers. The next item is going to be for business, is our state assessment review vision of a graduate. This is going to be led by the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Camella. Second, 3, 4. Jana.
So I can see it. I'm just moving so I can see it.
You have the presentation. Do we have copies? Angela, you have copies for the committee?
I do.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Excuse me. So Dr. Camilla and Ms. Brennan will be presenting the state assessment data. This is the finalized presentation. And this, they're going to provide the data-driven vision for student success and vision of a graduate.
Okay, good evening, everybody. So Angela is passing around the hard copies. Later tonight, superintendent will send out a digital version as well. Okay. Jeannie, you can go to the next slide, thank you. So tonight, we're going to present, as the superintendent said, myself and Mrs. Bradinini, starting with the vision of a graduate, talk through our data that's just been released about a month ago, talked about the action steps that the school district is taking along with the each of the schools, and answer any questions that you may have. Apologize for my voice in advance. About to have laryngitis for the second time in a month. Gina will gladly step in if it fails on me. The next slide is key terms. So this you may want to pull out of your presentation to kind of have as we go along slide by slide. I'm not going to talk through each one there, but they are there to kind of look at and to reference as we talk about each of the slides and the data. Our next slide is the vision of a graduate. Mrs. Bradley will talk, both of us will talk through this one. It's important to note that our strategic plan identifies every educator in the district as being responsible for getting all of our students through grade 12 and high school. And so what you see here is that success rate of having a 94% graduation rate at our high school. This is for the previous year. That's the most current data that we have. We're really proud of the work that all of our educators have done from kindergarten all the way through up till grade 12. And this data is a reflection of that. So if I could tell you that if you could have a high school that's top 10 in the state in math, ELA, and science, I think we'd all agree we'd gladly take it. And Charahoe High School is one of those high schools. So we're proud of the work that the teachers do, all of our teachers, to get our students through the high school and to be one of the top high schools in the state. Mrs. Brandon is going to talk about the vision of a graduate.
So the vision of a graduate is exactly that. This is what we expect students to be able to do as they cross that stage at the Ryan Center. So you can see below our learner qualities, all of the attributes that we work toward in our classrooms with our students in the lessons, also with all of the opportunities to have them work outside of the school as well, because these are the qualities that both at post-secondary and at the workforce are asking for our students to be able to do when they graduate. So this has been the goal and the vision for our students at the high school, and it has been also brought down to the middle school and now the elementary schools. So we are starting at the top and showing exactly what we want our students to be when they graduate.
So the next set of slides, we're really going to talk through an overview of the data, all of our RICAS data, SAT, PSAT, and so forth. So on the next slide, you can see our comparison to the state. So in terms of ELA, we had a 0.5 percentage drop, not as significant as the state, obviously. Math, we did slightly better, again, around the same state average. In science, we more than doubled the growth that you see in the state. One thing that we're also proud of is that our participation rate is high, extremely high, one of the highest numbers for students in the state. So our schools, this is a reflection of elementary, middle, and 11th grade in science, do a really great job of ensuring that students are in. The messaging is that students need to be in school to take the assessment. As you know, we use the data to help us plan and move forward in our strategic plan as well as our school improvement goals.
So very quickly for the SAT overview, you can see that our students this year, they met 67% were proficient in ELA and 33.5% in math. Again, we had one of the highest participation rates in the state. This year's SAT was the first year of an adaptive test. So this is the new SAT test. It's 100% digital. There were a couple of changes with the test itself, but the biggest change was that it was adaptive, meaning students took one section of Module 1, and everyone took those questions, that module. And based off of how they did on that module, because there was a mix of high, middle, and low questions, based on how they did, it adapted to Module 2. And so it was able to give students either more questions that were more difficult or questions that maybe met the range that students scored in that first module. In terms of scoring, that is a little bit more complicated because it's not just a straight 1-for-1 anymore, but essentially the students that were in the higher range in Module 2, those questions counted higher, counted more. So students that maybe didn't score so well in Module 1 and had easier questions or questions that weren't so difficult, they had to score more correctly in order to meet the same level as the students that scored higher.
And because there was such a significant change in the test setup itself, RIDE is using this year's data as a new benchmark moving forward. So we'll be able to compare ourselves to state data and other districts moving forward based on this current year data. So instructional days. So when we administer RICAS, the assessment, it's typically given somewhere between late March, and late April, okay? And what that means is the scores that you're seeing are based on students on that particular day when they take that assessment. However, there could be anywhere from 30 to 50 additional instructional days left in the school year. So even though students are getting assessed on all of the standards, there's the possibility that we haven't touched on some of them yet just because our curriculum is year-long. It spans 180 days. And so the RICAS assessment really is given at a certain point of the year. The window is set by RIDE, so we abide by that. But what we wanted to show you here is that we also do benchmark data at the school level as well. And so the benchmark data in math, last year's EOY data, and we typically do this at the very end of May, the beginning of June, 68% of our students on our benchmark data met or exceeded standard. And the beginning of year data, meaning the test that we just gave in September, we actually, and this is a little bit unusual, we actually had 71% of our students in math achieve at or above benchmark. On the English side, early literacy, which is a focus for the district, it's part of our early warning to make sure that all of our kids are readers by grade 3. 79% of our K-1 students meeting or exceeding standard. 80 is our goal, so we're just there. In our beginning of year benchmark, this was given to our grade 2 to 8 students. We're at 53%. Again, that's a pretty high to start the year. It's a good level to start. It's also a new assessment for us, so we don't have anything to base it on for last year. The assessment that we were using as part of our resource is no longer available, so we're using something different in its place. It's actually going to give us a better idea of where our students are and a better alignment to RICAS. So we're excited about using it moving forward. Attendance. So the push, as you know, RIDE is heavily focused on attendance this year, and that's because especially the year after the pandemic, we saw chronic absenteeism increase. Now, chronic absenteeism is measured in terms of a percentage of that particular time in the year. So it's when students are absent 10% or more at any given time of the year. At the end of the year, it's a minimum of 18 school days. So we know that attendance is significant. It determines dropout rates for our students. And it determines if they're going to achieve on standards. As you can see, there's a significant discrepancy for students who are in school every day and for students who are chronically absent. It's also linked to suspension and increased mental health issues. So it's very important. All of our schools have school improvement goals to increase attendance. Chronic absenteeism rate did drop over the last couple of years out of the pandemic, so we're happy about that, but we know there's still more work to do around that. So just to review, if you look at the data in each of those levels, whether it's RICAS, ELA, math, SAT, ELA, or math, there's about a 50% difference for students who come to school every day versus students who are chronically absent, and that's significant. And so that has an impact. We saw a couple of our schools impacted greatly by that. So every school does have a goal, as does the district, to ensure that students are in school every day. School highlights. So we're excited. We see our schools achieve and do really well. almost 75% of students in grade 4 at Richmond were proficient or exceeded in math. Ashaway, 84.6 at grade 4. Charlestown, 61% in grade 3 in ELA. The high school, as we mentioned, the high school in particular, 69.3% of students were proficient in ELA. That's top 8 in the state. Our middle school, in 8th grade, 52.3% of students. That's an 11.6 point increase for that cohort of students. I think it's the biggest we've seen at the middle school in the past several years, certainly over 50%. So we're excited about that as well. And again, it speaks to the fact that all of our students move from all of our schools through the middle to the high. Okay, the end result being graduation and success at high school. The two areas I saved for last, Hope Valley and Cala. So their success really was shown in growth. When we talk about growth, we talk about how students close the gap in terms of achievement. There's low growth where the gap kind of widens a little bit. There's typical growth where students are kind of on pace day to day, but there's high growth. And this is where we want to see our students, in high growth, because high growth indicates that students are actually closing the gap faster. So if they're, say, a grade level behind, in a given year, if they're showing high growth, they're actually closing that at a faster rate. So what it means for them is they're going to end up being at grade level at some point. So for Hope Valley, at grade 4, we had almost 70% of our students showing high growth in math, and even more significant was 62.5% for our students with IEPs. That's pretty significant. CALA, in the same, just to talk about growth again, 50% of our students in ELA and CALA showed high growth. And we know CALA is our alternative school. That's significant because those students are coming in with a variety of issues. Despite all that, they're showing growth and they're closing their gap, their achievement gap. The next couple of set of slides is around, just shows our meeting and exceeding in ELA and math. On this first slide, we wanted to really define what meeting and exceeding means in terms of the state. So RIDE says that meeting expectations is when a student has demonstrated academic abilities expected for their grade level, right? So are they on grade level? Are they meeting the standards at that grade level? Exceeding means they go deeper. Okay, so they've met standards, they have a deeper understanding and mastery of the material, and they perform significantly above what is typical for their grade level. Okay, so you can see the trend. Oh, Gina, if you can just go, yeah, Stan, yeah, it's okay. You can see the trend. So we are, we kind of stayed stable. We saw that, I would say many school districts around the state saw a significant drop in ELA. One of the reasons there was a change in this test as well in terms of how it was scored. So the writing portion of the ELA was scored through AI, okay? 90% of the writing was scored through AI, 10% through human means. It's a reverse of what they've done in the past. We've reached out to RIDE, we've questioned it, Superintendent's Association, I'm sure RIASP as well, the Principals Association. The unfortunate thing is that RIDE is not releasing any student samples or any of the...
Because I just want to be clear, so RIDE, when I talked to the commissioner and the deputy commissioner, Massachusetts, we get our tests from Massachusetts. It's the same, it's the MCAS, we just call it RICAS. And Massachusetts had decided not to release any items. That then doesn't allow RIDE to release the items to us. So the commissioner expressed her concerns as well. They've revetted their contract to say that at minimum, Massachusetts must release every other year. Because what happens now is when we have the data about the writing, in the past, we were able to look at the student writing samples to be very diagnostic about it and to move forward and make a plan. This year, we don't have that data. So when we see a student score, we can't relate it back to their writing piece. So the commissioner has expressed her concern as well. They've reevaluated the contract, and now next year we will get it. But unfortunately, it's a moot point. But because of the AI scoring, as you can imagine, our educators and our administrators were very frustrated because it doesn't allow us the information that we typically like to see in order to make a plan.
Are they gonna release any samples?
No.
No.
Not even like a high?
Nope.
Nothing?
Nothing, sure, no.
Well, that's really unfortunate.
And we use it to credit all our schools. It's one of the things that they used in order to, improve student writing, yeah. Next. So the next slide on math, as you can see, we held, continued slight growth in math and have approached pre-pandemic level. The 2019, the one on the far left, is the pre-pandemic score. So just for some, point of emphasis and, context. The next slide in science, again, we're at 50.6% in terms of students meeting and achieving. And that's a combination of grades 5, 8, and 11. Those are the only grades that science is administered in. The next two slides are about partially meeting. We started to look at our data. We always look at our data pretty deeply. And so just to provide some context of what partially meeting means, the RIDE definition is a student who receives a partially meeting test score indicates they have demonstrated some, but not all, of the expected academic skills for their grade level. So students who fall in partially meeting are not failing students by that definition. They're students who have shown that they can master some of the standards, but not all. And that's the difference between partially and meeting. So you can see the difference there. Of significance is that when we looked at the data, 500, not to get too deep, is the scale score, is the difference. So when a student earns a 500, that means they're meeting a 500 or above. We had in ELA 32 students who scored a 499, 23 a 498, and 20 a 497. That's approximately 1 to 3 questions where they missed meeting. I want to say there's 34? It's somewhere between 30 and 35 and 40.
So it's the difference between getting an A+ or 100 versus a 98 on an exam.
Or, well, the partially meeting, I would lean more toward a 70. Yeah. But the meeting would be the A, yes.
Right, it's similar to when we grade at the high school. So to pass, you need a 70, but, you know, to be the valedictorian, you need straight A's kind of thing. So basically, what we wanted to make sure people understood is that if your child is getting a partially meeting, it does not mean that they're failing. It means, and again, like Dr. Camella said, you have 30 to 50 days left, more than a whole quarter, to instruct. So in that point of time, they were partially meeting the majority of the standards, where some of their peers were meeting and exceeding. Now, our goal, obviously, is to get everybody in the meeting and exceeding, which is why we're focused on the early literacy and our work. But this, we thought, was important for not just our families and our students, but our educators to see just the differences 1, 2, or 3 questions can make.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's
Just
a good question.
Prudent to put it in there.
Thank you, Craig. And Gina, if you can go to the math. So same thing on the math. Actually, we had even more students who were just a point away on the scaled score from meetings. We had 51 students with a 499.20, with a 498, and 23 with a 497. So we know, to Gina's point, that, we do have instructional days left, and that's significant for us. That's why we don't always rely on, or only rely on the state data. We have our benchmark data as well that drives a lot of what we do. So our areas of focus in our strategic plan, so we continue, to progress toward our goals in math and ELA. Of significance are these 2 areas here, students with disabilities and economically disadvantaged students. And we saw the highest achievement in our district, in our highest move among these students. So in ELA, we saw students increase by 2.1% in ELA for students with disabilities, and up another 1.5 in math. And especially with our economically disadvantaged students, in ELA, we're up to 30.7 meeting or exceeding, and 30.4 in math. As the superintendent mentioned a little bit earlier in a previous meeting, we were also cited by, I forget the publication, but we were top 5 in the state in addressing students with economic disadvantages in literacy. So you
So,
can
and
kind of
just
see
in
that.
for some context, our students who have special education services, last year when we had the data, we didn't see any growth with our students. And they are 80% or more, about 82% are in general education settings. So we're not talking about our students who are in more self-contained areas. So what we did was, I have to say, our educators came to the table with our administrators to really, and their school improvement teams, to really rethink those services and supports. And Dr. Camella is going to get a little bit more into this with our multi-tiered systems of support. But this is significant for our school district, and because it showed that we saw even some of our students that had special services also were chronically absent. So our teams really dug deep into being very proactive about getting students back into school, and we saw more than a year growth of students who improved attendance in that year. So obviously, we know when you come to school, and if you miss a day, it all can pile on. It gets, we've heard people say, well, it's their birthday, but we're really trying to say, we understand there are special events. And we, Ms. Poor shared with me a letter from a dentist's office that says, please send your child back to school after the dentist appointment. We all know it takes a village. This is not just the educators. They're absolutely key, essential in this work, but it's our families, it's our students, it's our administrators, our teachers, it's our community. It takes a village. And I think when we all work together, we can see that our students are showing incredible growth.
So the next slide just compares us to Massachusetts. As we mentioned earlier, we take the same assessment in grades 3 to 8 as Massachusetts. And so continually, we outperform Massachusetts. And the reason why it's significant is Massachusetts is actually one of the top performing states when you look at all of their assessment in the country. And if they were their own country, they would be one of the top performing in the world. So that's why we hold ourselves up to Massachusetts as well, because they are a top performing state. They have been for a long time. And so, we've typically have compared our results to theirs as well.
This spring was the first time that we had our 9th graders take a PSAT. And so we wanted to provide you with that data. The point of having our students take the PSAT in 9, 10, and 11 is just that's more data for us to use in order to see where our students are. the SAT is a very different test than the RICAS. So to have that data earlier on in ninth grade is a real support for our teachers in order to help instruct our students. So you can see here that our students, 44% of them met both the math and the ERW, which stands for evidence-based reading and writing, or ELA if you want to have that equivalency. So 44% of them met both. 74% met the ELA benchmark, which is a 430 on the in the scale, and then 47% of our students met the math benchmark. And we put Rhode Island and the nation there as a comparison, so you can see that we are exceeding both Rhode Island and the national scores. This is one set of scores that we are extremely proud of. This is our PSAT 10s, our sophomores. 50% of our students met both benchmarks. 81% met the benchmark for the evidence-based reading and writing, which is incredible. 80% that's the score that everyone is looking for. So our students are at 81% in their for their PSAT 10s, and 52% have met the math benchmark. And again, there's Rhode Island and the nation to see how well we're doing. And finally, for our SAT, 34% of our students met both benchmarks. 69% met the evidence-based reading and writing, which again, we're looking for that 80%. That's the goal across the board, across what people are really holding as the standard. And so we're not far off, and we have really good hopes, especially given our 10th graders that are going to be taking the test this year. And then 35% met the math benchmark. We have Rhode Island and we have the nation there, but we also have Connecticut. And I think it's important to note that Connecticut also has the SAT as their state standardized assessment. Massachusetts does not. So while we do have Massachusetts to compare to for RICAS and MCAS, it is a very different comparison when we're talking about SAT. And so you can see there that we have also outperformed the Connecticut scores. For our AP, so this is advanced placement classes, if you look all the way, the last column there, this is a comparison across the years. We had 194 students take an AP exam. So that increased, and you can see it's been pretty stagnant across the board. We've increased to 19% of our students are taking an AP class and taking an AP exam. Students that scored a 3 or higher, which again, 3 is that benchmark, was 75% of our students. So again, a huge growth, especially when we're talking about post-COVID years. And our students are earning and achieving at high levels. Some highlights from the AP tests. So we have a number of courses themselves where students, over 85% of the test scores were 3 or higher. So our art classes, calculus, drawing, US history, biology, art history, chemistry, and English lit, all of those were extremely high performing on their AP exams. And then we finally have some AP scholars. So 27 of our students earned the AP Scholar recognition, which is a great honor for our students. Yes, 3, so just 3 is a 3 or higher is when students have the ability to earn college credits if colleges do accept those. So students can walk away with quite a number of credits before they even start college. One more thing, sorry. Just a little bug in my ear right here. In addition to our SAT scores, and our science scores being in the top 10, our 22, 23 AP scores have also put us in the top 10 in Rhode Island. We just don't have it on there because they are the 22, 23. We'll have the 23, 24 scores in January. So we'll have those and we can share those with you as well. But given the scores themselves, the raw data there, I don't anticipate us, falling at all and still being in that top 10.
Thanks, Jean. So the next set is, we're really going to finish up here and talking about what we're doing to address, the data that we've discussed tonight. And our major implementation this year, which is priority number 2 in our district strategic plan, is around multi-tiered systems of support. You heard the superintendent talk a little bit about earlier tonight. So we have this odd dentist analogy, which I can relate to, unfortunately. So what we talk about when we talk about multi-tiered systems of support, first and foremost, it's addressing the student in all areas and wholly, meaning, looking at student academically, behaviorally, socially, emotionally, all of those areas that we know impact a student's achievement. And sometimes we look at them separately. So when we're looking at students to try to diagnose if a student's having an issue academically, sometimes the issue is not academics, it's behavior that's getting in the way of academics. What a multi-tiered systems of support is going to help us do is to really resolve those issues and understand when a student is struggling, whether it's behaviorally or academically, what is the root cause of that struggle. We've done a nice job in the district with our response to intervention that we have here. That is now going to become part of this framework. And so the best way to describe it is this dentist analogy. So every day, hopefully, you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you floss, you do some mouthwash, and you end the day with like that as well. Maybe you have another opportunity to get it in midday. That's what we call our tier 1. That's your preventative measures. Those are what you're doing to prevent cavities or other things happening in your mouth, to prevent, seeing the dentist. So that's our tier 1. Our tier 1 is what we do instructionally every day. The superintendent said 82% of those students with IEPs, and all of our students are in core classes every single day. So what we're focused on with our math and ELA curricula, our science coming up, is are we implementing them with fidelity? Are they working in our classrooms? Are we ensuring that students are getting standard level instruction on a day-to-day basis? That's what we would consider our preventative measures. Tier 2 is when you go to the dentist and the dentist finds a cavity. They address the cavity, they fill it, maybe you add sealants or there's some other measure, and then you're back. You're back to just, continuing your preventative measures. And tier 2 for us would be a student or a group of students have an issue in mathematics. There could be some issue with adding fractions, right? And so those students would meet with the classroom teacher 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the need, for a series of weeks, getting additional support with that. And so that's what tier 2 means in that respect. Tier 3 now is more significant. Tier 3, you've gone to the dentist. You need more than what the dentist can do, okay? I had an implant last year. I needed more than what the dentist could do, okay? So that was my tier 3. That's when you bring in a specialist. That's when you have to go, to the orthodontist, a surgeon, someone else to do the work necessary to repair what's happening with your tooth. For us, tier 3 is our students with IEPs, students who may need additional services from our special educators, students who may need additional support in math or reading, who might meet with our math specialists and our reading specialists. So largely, we have a lot of this in place now. What we're really doing is focusing the work, starting to focus really more on ensuring that our core instruction in the classrooms is where we want it to be, especially now that we're in year 3 of implementing our core resources. And then strengthening what tier 2 looks like in the classroom, and then ensuring that we are providing our students in tier 3 with the most direct supports. The rest of the slides are really I'll just kind of leave that up there. And again, we're implementing our MTSS framework. We've continued to do these over the last couple of years because we're continuing to see success with them. So when you do see success with the implementation, you don't vary from it. You continue to focus and move in that same direction. Gina, if you, yeah, go to the next slide. Thank you. You can just kind of review those.
Right, and these are all from the approved district strategic plan or the
School improvement plan.
The district school improvement plans that And anyone interested in more information specific to the schools, this is information that's reviewed their data at the school improvement team meetings. So you feel free to reach out to your school about their next meeting so they can share their data chats and their conversations. This is an ongoing work every year, every month, every day. But our teachers, our educators, our administrators, support professionals, the work, like Dr. Camilla said, there's been good work that's continued to happen. It's really being about targeted and support, so like working smarter, not harder. We put some things in place that we're going to allow our teachers more time to think about their individual students and less time writing plans over and over and over again, because we have some digitized systems that we're moving, and actually all of our principals will be receiving their data dashboards update on Friday that will really help them streamline their supports for students and give teachers the information at their fingertips.
The next slide was shared at last Friday's Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns Conference with Superintendent Mr. Zenni, and I believe Ms. Davis was in attendance as well. And we thought this was significant to share. So even though it's 22-23 data, because we wouldn't get the most updated data, they're always right, it would be always a year behind based on when LEAs submit. So just to kind of give some context about the slide you're looking at, the shade of the bubbles might be a little bit difficult to see, but the shade of the bubbles represents the percentage of disadvantaged students, and the size represents student enrollment. So for Charahoe, it's approximately 18 to 21% of our students that fall into that category. The graph also includes the vertical dotted line representing the average per pupil expenditure, and the horizontal line is the average RICAS, math, and ELA. So they averaged math and ELA together. This divides the quadrant into divides the graph into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is the upper left. Okay, so quadrant 1 is the upper left. Quadrant 1 includes districts with lower than average expenditures per pupil and higher than average RICAS results. Quadrant 2 includes districts with higher than average expenditures and higher RICAS results. Quadrant 3, which is the lower left, includes districts with lower than average per pupil expenditures and RICAS results. And quadrant 4 includes districts with higher than average per pupil expenditure and lower RICAS results. Clearly, if you're a district, you want to be in quadrant 1. The presenters, I believe, last week called quadrant 1 the quadrant of success. And so I'm happy to report Charahoe falls within the quadrant of success. Again, just emphasizing the fact we started off tonight's presentation talking about where our kids end up as they go through every grade level in all of our schools. Okay, so I just want to reemphasize that fact that what we are doing here is educating our students, and we're doing it fiscally responsibly. And also to reemphasize that the high school, which is where the vast majority of our students end up, there were only 8 high schools in the state who finished with ELA, math, and science in the top 10. Our high school was one of them. Okay. So if you have any questions, please let us know.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just use your microphone so people can hear.
Okay, I just have a few questions. Where do you guys get the data on the SATs? Where does that, the national scores that you have there, where does that come from?
So 2 places you can get it on the Rhode Island assessment, RIDE assessment link, that's all there. So if you go, that's a public link, and you can access all of that there. There's also College Board, but College Board I don't think is public.
Well, College Board is public, because their
Oh, okay.
scores are showing that the average for the US is over 1,000, so that's why I was curious to where you got that information.
Yeah, thank you, Jean.
That score is for the SAT school day score, not a composite score of all SAT tests that have been taken. So
School day score, meaning?
that one day in the spring that schools take their SAT, it's that one day, that's what that score is based off of. So
it's not the full, it's not.
it's not
the
every
holistic look.
single SAT opportunity that students have had over the spring.
So for example, students can, as we know, if you had a student take SAT, they can retake the SAT. That, even if they score higher, the state won't recalculate and give us a new score, because that's what they did in that moment in time. So like we explained, you've got like 30 to 50 days left of instruction, but in that moment of time, that what we call the school day, now Rhode Island does the school day, they take that composite, where you have other private schools or Catholic schools, they send their kids out for SATs. That's different because they'll keep calculating as they keep trying, where this is a moment in time.
Okay, and so if you compare that to the rest of the nation, does the rest of the nation do the same thing, school day, or is that just a Rhode Island?
It's a state-to-state decision.
It's state to state, like Connecticut will do the school day, which is why we do that comparison to Connecticut. Massachusetts does not do the school day. So their SAT scores are typically higher, but also fewer students take the SAT.
They're not required to take the SAT unless their college needs it.
Okay, and so how many other states are in our cluster, I would say, of ones that do the same, that basically perform the SAT and do it the same way that Rhode Island does? What other states do that?
I can research that and get that back to
Connecticut
you.
is one that we know it doesn't.
Right, I mean, outside of Connecticut, just so that we have a better comparison for, how we stand with, with comparable schools, comparable states, that type of thing. Because, I'm just looking at some of the other stuff that we have here. So in 2022, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had 1020 for the SAT scores. 2023, we're at 1019. 2024 is at 1009. So you're saying that the reason we went down was because the test was changed? Is that
Not
correct?
necessarily. The average score across the board went down for, the nation and for Rhode Island itself. So across the board, the scores went down. The test change itself may have had something to do with it, but they're also very comparable. These SAT scores are comparable to what their PSAT scores were their 10th grade year. So that cohort of students is pretty comparable. So we're not seeing that they did extremely, extremely well their 10th grade year and then they totally fell off their junior year. They're aligned. That growth is exactly what was expected from their sophomore year to their junior year.
Okay, so you're paying attention more to the growth from the PSATs to the SATs? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that cohort as opposed to discrete year to year.
Okay, and do all of this, were these changes to the SATs, was this just done in the state of Rhode Island or was it done nationwide? Do you know?
Nationwide.
Nationwide, okay, thank you. And then the other question I had is when the changes to the RICAS went into place, so there weren't any changes to the RICAS testing, is that correct?
Only the way the writing was scored,
Only the way it was scored, not the actual
not the actual assessment.
criteria
No.
itself? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Tyler?
Can you talk to me about the change in the test scores? Not change in the test scores, the change in you talked about modules, module 1, module 2 of the SAT. Can you explain that to me a little more? Because the way I understood what you had said was, if you didn't do so great on module 1, you're going to get easier questions in module 2. How does that allow us to compare students across the district? If someone did really well in module 1, they're getting really hard questions in module 2, might not do as well. But someone who did really bad in module 1 is going to get easier questions in module 2. How do we compare?
So there's the easiest way to do that is those harder questions that a student might get in module 2 have more weight to them.
Okay.
So they need to do well on fewer questions than a student would do if they didn't score so well in module 1. So it's not a perfect comparison,
Right.
but and to be honest, College Board has their formula like super secret. Like there's no way I could go and I could figure it out myself. College Board keeps that formula secret, but essentially, you get more weight to your questions if you do better on module 1.
And just to make it more complicated, if you get to module 2 and you did not score as high and get the adaptive higher level questions, they now do an error analysis. So you may get a harder question right in module 2, but they'll give you no points because you got the questions that they believe you should have gotten correct wrong. Oh my goodness. They call that the error analysis elimination. So basically, when we tell students, just take a guess, that doesn't mean they're gonna give you the correct score. So what happened was, because of all of that shift, RIDE is saying this is a new benchmark because this is not the same test from years past. So in essence, it's a new game for SAT, which is why moving forward, we'll be using this data to judge. But yeah, if we could get it even more complicated, that was.
The other part of the adaptive portion is that if students, scored well in Module 1 and they start to get difficult questions in Module 2 and they're not scoring well, it will shift those questions now to be easier questions as well. So it's adaptive all the way through that second module.
All right, just a question on this. So my daughter took it in grade 9, so she had no basis of knowledge of the PSATs or SATs. So she got the adaptive questions. It was kind of a curveball, but it was no big deal because she didn't have any frame of knowledge. The kids who took the PSATs in grade 10 and then took the SATs in grade 11, when they had that shift, did they keep it consistent or did they shift the SATs for those kids who had taken the old PSAT and now they're taking the new SAT? Did they have to take the new version of the SAT?
Yes, it was 100%. It was 100% adoption of the new test. There were some other features of the test that I think would work in the favor of the test takers. For example, for those of us that took it a million years ago, you would have a longer passage and then you would have maybe 3 or 4 questions, multiple choice questions that would go with one passage. The test itself has changed now, so it's 1-to-1. So you have a smaller passage and then one discrete question. And so it's 1-to-1. So you're not having to go back to the same passage over and over again. So, I think that as a student taking that test, that is one feature that's easier.
And College Board they got a lot of pushback about the new formula. So the Department of Education in Rhode Island gave some extreme pushback. And as a result of the pushback, the College Board will be providing all the districts in Rhode Island with free Khan Academy district level, not the free version, so that our teachers and our counselors can get in there in depth and review the specifics around each student to be able to use that student data to assign support around PSAT and SAT.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Yes, Sharon, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, please. Thank you.
My only question is, I don't understand why the Rhode Island State figures are at 47% for ELA and 21% for math. That's just so horrible. And although Charahoe is doing well, I still don't understand. I can't get excited about 33% in math. Math was my favorite. So I in general, I would like to know what are you guys doing to get better than that even? Whatever this thing, you told me this, it was in the beginning.
That's the SAT. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
So Sharon, some of that, the conversation, that's why Dr. Camilla talked about the moment of time. There are 30 to 50 days left of instruction when they're given that assessment. They haven't even finished their school year yet. So they may not even had some standards done. So what happens is that's one, remember, an SAT is about college readiness. It tells us that they're ready for college. Well, they're in 11th grade. They still have 50 days left in 11th grade and then 180 days left in senior year. So what you want to do is you want to take that data and say, well, they may not have hit the score that gave them the 3, right? For the NAP or the scale score for the SAT, they may have been close. So when we talked about the RICAS being partially proficient, that doesn't mean students are failing. It may be the difference of, hey, I got the C in ELA, but you got the A. So there's a balance. So when you see it, at that moment in time, that 33% was able to master their grade level standards and or exceed.
I just still think 33% is
No, the
low.
goal is to get better, but you want to be mindful
And
of
it just
it's not the
amazes
only
me
test.
that for the state, it's 21 in math. I mean, how are these people going to work? If they can't count, I'm sorry. That's where I am. Thank you.
Well, actually, great question. So at the presentation, just so Dr. Camilla has some test items.
Well, even as you're pulling those up, I just want to address that. So when you look at, and this is all public, When you look at the SAT, I mentioned that despite the low number, Ms. Davis is correct, we're still, I think we were still 9th in mathematics. Right, and you would say, well, that's 34% of kids, right? I think there's a lot of agreement out there that, and I'll say it publicly, that SAT may not be the best benchmark for high school students, okay? Because of the way it measures, it's changed this year. That's not an excuse. I'm just saying that when you look at the 7 districts above us, I don't think anyone's scoring above 70% in math. I think it's like 67, then it goes into the 50s, and then there's a group of us in the 30s. So it's a relative score, okay? It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that our kids can't count or that kids can't do math. Our kids, I would say our graduation requirements, we have some of the most rigorous in the state. Our kids have to earn more, go above and beyond the requirements set by RIDE, which includes, in most cases for students, a 4th year in math. So we ensure that our kids, when they leave, we're cognizant of the fact, that's why 2 years ago we introduced statistics as that a course that for their 4th year, because we know that students go to college and may not be in a STEM, but they may be doing something in the humanities that requires a statistics background. Okay, so we're confident that our kids are leaving and they are proficient. And I want Ms. Bradney just to talk about a little bit of what we're doing in math to address.
So in math itself, we have been working with our teachers, especially at that tier 1 level that Dr. Camilla had talked about with MTSS. And part of that is looking at differentiation in the classroom, working with students specifically at their skills and their goals. So students that are in those math classes, we have a program called ALEX, and it actually tracks students. It's a very individual program where students, they fill out their ALEX, they complete some assignments, and it helps determine, okay, here's the next set of problems that you need to work on, or here's some more review that you need. It's very individualized for students to help them to achieve that proficiency. We are doing walkthroughs in math classes and taking a look at some of the instructional practices and giving some feedback in order to help support teachers and students in those classes. Because math is definitely one of those goals that we're looking at to making sure that students can grow and achieve.
And let's be clear, our students can do basic math, and they can do more than that. But the kinds of math questions that they're being asked, like this is an 8th grade math question. It is not basic addition or basic multiplication. They're not only asked to solve, but explain. And those student responses get scored as well. And one of the things that's, I think, it's important to know is that across the state, you can now look at all the high schools across the state, unless they're private or parochial. There is no measurement. So when people say, oh, you can opt out or go to whatever private school, there's no bar that tells you the difference between this school or that school. This allows public schools to say, this is where, how you're spending your dollars, this is what the results are. But again, don't lose sight of the fact that the only thing that puts our students in the same grade is their age. And it was based on an old tradition of the farmer's calendar. So that doesn't mean that we can't say all kids have to learn the exact same thing at the exact same time and that light bulb will go off. We work really hard to make sure the light bulbs are going off, but sometimes students need more time. So when you take a test in a moment of time, to say that 50 days of instruction that still hasn't happened yet isn't going to be as important. That's why we showed you the end of year benchmark data. Some students need all 180 days. Some students need a lot less. Some students will need even more. So that's why we have extended school years, extracurriculars. But those opportunities that exist are important to understand that it's one measurement, because I would never want a parent to say, oh, well, my child received a partially proficient, they're failing, because that is not what that means. So we really want to be mindful, because the message, our teachers, our kids, our families see comments like that, and it can be jarring, but it is important. This is important information, and it gives us that information to allow us to give feedback to our instructors and talk with our students and our families. But we have a lot of assessments, and no one would ever take one piece of information and then run with that. You want to look at multiple pieces of information. And if a parent or family member is concerned or wants to talk through, our educators and our administrators are excellent at holding those meetings with our families to be able to walk them through individual score reports with their own children.
Laura?
Gina, I want to say that the teachers in our district are amazing. They do a phenomenal job, and I completely agree with you on that. But I'm just wondering, do we have somebody specifically within our district that looks at the cumulative information that's publicly available on RIDE, or that, keeps track of how our schools are doing individually? Because a lot of the data because you guys have it posted all the way back to 2006, and I've cataloged all of it, and it's very interesting to see the trend data that's available there. And I'm just curious if in our district, who pays attention to that? Who's looking at, where, and are you comparing us to the top performing schools in Rhode Island?
So that's what we did tonight. So what you saw, like in terms of.
Prior to COVID.
Well, the assessment was different prior to COVID. So the RICAS came out in 2017.
Right, so we had PARC
2017.
before that. It
Yeah,
was a
so we had
different
a
test.
separate assessment before that, and then in the
NECAP before that.
mid-2000s, we had a separate assessment. So
And
it's
then
hard.
New Standards Reference
Yeah,
before that.
Yeah, so there were different assessments ever since 2006. So I think going back that far in time, there is some value in that. We are focused on the present to understand better, like where our kids are, and that's why we use this data, especially the RICAS. Superintendent's fond of saying that the RICAS is more of the autopsy because it helps us look back at like what we did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Our benchmark data that we also shared a little bit tonight helps us move forward as well.
Okay, but
So-
there's not like a specific within our district, like there's not somebody in charge of basically looking at taking more of a holistic approach to, okay, where were changes made within our own district? Like, for example, did the ELA grades or did the reading start to, come down more after we introduced Chromebooks in this time period?
No,
Things of
so
that nature.
we do that, we are all doing that as administrators, as school improvement teams, as data teams at the school level, and then at the higher level, Dr. Camella and Dorothy Fitzgerald are our lead data analysis team. They actually can give you the accountability data faster than RIDE can, because they both are the lead data people in the district. What happens is, what you want to be mindful of is when you're doing RIDECast, you want to compare apples to apples. So grade 3 from 2006, they've graduated, right? So that's those students are already past the graduation rate. You want to look, that's why we look at the growth, because if you look from grade 3 to grade 4, you have growth data now. So we know, are we growing our students from grade to grade? We know when we put in the new curriculum, and that's another thing that we do. We adapt curriculum based on need. If we notice 35 students across the district all got the same question wrong, we look at the kind of question, we have the question level, we do item analysis, we look at the kinds of responses to say, is that a curriculum issue? Did we actually teach this? We have to make sure we do this sooner, and then we revise our curriculum based on the needs that we get from assessments like this. But when you're looking at the growth, we go from what we call the cohort data, grade 3 to grade 4. So what we've seen is from grade 3 to grade 11, right, when they get their last assessment, kids are continuing to grow all along. So while some students may be right on the target in grade 3, and we see our grade 3 are the highest scores we've ever seen, they have, and with the new assessment and the new curriculum, they are the first classroom to have the complete, since kindergarten, the interreading and the iReady. They're our first class. So that's a good barometer check for us to say, okay, so these students started in K and now have had all that. So we are always reviewing data. We look at demographics. We look at our students based on special education services, economically disadvantaged.
Absentee.
We look at students who need accommodations. There's a multitude of data that has to happen, which is why, again, the data dashboards are even more important because, to Dr. Camella's point, students, there's more than just academics. We have a lot of our students who are chronically absent. They also are experiencing significant anxiety, depression. Our DCYF calls are at its highest since the post-pandemic. We have significant students who have trauma, and that's real. So when you ask a child to come in to be ready for academics, sometimes they're not. And we balance that along with everything else to be ensure that we're thinking about the whole child and not just, plugging them through the curriculum. So they're real people, and they're not all, I have 3 children. They all do things differently. So to say that because we have an old way of doing things with a farmer calendar, that everyone's going to meet standard by April 15th is not necessarily realistic. But the goal is to look at the student as a trajectory. Are we growing every student every year? And that's the goal.
One of the things that oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Donna.
We're going to say the same thing. I just think that this is commendable. And I see that we have a lot of our principals here, and the leadership is here, the administration and the teachers. I think this is commendable. And I would like to suggest that we bring this per pupil expenditure chart out and explain it when we have our budget workshops to the towns, because I think our towns, our 3 towns, as far as their education is concerned for their children, are getting a heck of a lot of bang for their buck. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
So, I echo what Donna says, what Donna said. One of the things that I think is difficult with this is a very easy thing to extrapolate for the public to say, look at our scores, look at our numbers, look at our data. We're not doing as well as we should be. What I would caution everybody is, as has been reiterated tonight, this is one data point. There's so much data that goes into looking at how our schools are doing. So I would suggest, yes, this is important data. It absolutely is important data. You know, sometimes I joke, you either have an Excel mind or you have a Word mind, right? So I have a colleague at work, he will type a Word document in Excel because he needs the structure of an Excel document. I'm a Word document kind of person. I'm looking at it a little bit less with the data points, more the whole child. So I would invite the public, when you walk away from this meeting tonight, walk away knowing that, yes, this is a data point. Yes, there's room for growth. I don't think we can say there isn't room for growth. There's always room for growth. Yes, we have a data team that's looking at all of these pieces of data, keeping up with the fact that they keep changing the tests, right? So keeping up with all of that information too. We have an eye on it. There is room for improvement. There always is, but we're mindful of that. And that is our goal as a district, to keep improving and making sure our children are ready when they graduate high school to go into the workforce, to go to college, to go into the military, to make sure that they're ready for wherever life takes them. Are there any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Our next item on the agenda is the request of Coach Bill Haberak for 18 athletes and 5 chaperones to travel to Bowdoin Park, Wapingers Falls, New York, for the Nike Northeast meet on November 22nd and 23rd. This is an annual event which has been attended by Chara House since 2010. We will be departing on 11/22 at 10:30 a.m., returning at 7 p.m. on 11/23. They are sharing bus transportation with Hendricken High School.
Second.
I recommend approval.
Are there questions on the field trip? All right, those in favor of the field trip? That is unanimous, thank you.
Okay, so this is a request to extend the Ocean State Transportation Contract with the Charahoe for FY26. This agreement was bid out 4 years ago. It had 2 optional extension years. The extension terms are reasonable. It was reviewed by the Transportation Subcommittee and asked to be moved forward to the School Committee. And I am recommending the contract extension through FY26.
So moved.
Second.
There are questions on the extension, Tyler?
Gina, what are those reasonable terms?
Oh, I can pull it up.
They weren't included in anything that we received in our packets.
Hold on.
We went up $10 per bus per year.
Thanks, Chris. Oh, you have it? Thank you. Actually, you know what? You want to pass it down? Then Carl can see it.
It's about a 2.5% increase across everything.
So just to remind people, when we had the transportation contract, we were very lucky to get this in under the wire because most districts saw 15 to 20% increases in transportation. We did not. So we do feel that the 2.5, right, Department?
It ranges between 2.3 to 2.55, depending on which
It's a very
area.
reasonable, based on the current inflation, and as we know, everything is going up, but we thought it was reasonable. We've received good service from Ocean State. They've been good partners. So the extension allows us to do an additional year, which is what recommended by the Transportation Subcommittee and myself, and Mr. Zenian.
Craig?
So be prepared for when this contract expires.
Yeah. Yes.
Is this the first renewal term?
Second.
This is the second year of that renewal?
Yes.
All right.
Tyler, FY26, the last column is what you should be looking at.
Got, yep. Thanks, Greg.
Other questions? All right. Oh, Jess.
So I don't have a question, but as someone who has attended 2 ethics commission presentations this year, one of the questions I had was about if someone shares your last name. So Tony Murgo shares my maiden name. We're not related. I do have an Uncle Tony. This is not him. So, you know, I will vote on this openly. But,
Thanks for sharing.
oh, because I asked for her opinion. She said if something comes up that just whatever. So that's my
Oh, okay.
statement.
Public announcement.
I appreciate that.
Oh, Tony.
Any other questions? Right, those in favor?
Unanimous.
That is unanimous. Thank you.
Right. The next item on the agenda is our memorandum of agreement, distribution of categorical funding, RIDE Career and Technical Education. This is a program equipment fund grant that we get each year. It is given to the 10 regional, original vocational career and tech centers. It's the same, every district gets the same amount. We are receiving $111,111. And I have asked Angela to pass around the overall budget that Director Orth has put forward to be able to utilize this equipment fund that we get each year from RIDE. So we don't have to use taxpayer dollars. I make a recommendation to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. This is coming around to you.
Just in case people are looking for big picture.
So,
Go ahead.
so what I've come to learn over the years, we're the regional hub, though. We dispense it out to the other school districts in this region.
No, this is our dollars.
No, but we also are home. Disregard what I just said.
Jerry, come on up.
I'd love to come up and explain that process to you. That process is no longer continued in Rhode Island.
But it used to be.
It used to be. Those were Perkins dollars. Those were federal dollars.
All right.
Categorical, this is state aid. So this is different than the feds. Something else.
He's up there. Everybody, please.
Anybody have questions on this? Now that you've got your eyes on where it is to be
Yes.
spent.
Yeah, can you just clarify something you said a minute ago, Gina? And I don't know, Jerry, you said every district gets the same amount?
All the original districts get the same amount.
So the categorical offset is $4 million in the state budget. $1 million of that is put aside and it's distributed to the original 10 career and tech centers.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
it's saying, since there's career and tech in every high school now, we need a little more because we do a little more as a regional center.
Gotcha.
So this is very beneficial to us as a school.
Any other questions? All right.
Did we do it? Did we vote?
I think those approval and agreement. Yeah, it's unanimous.
You had a motion in a second, right?
Did we have a motion?
Yeah,
we did.
Oh,
We did.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just checking too.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the Rhode Island Department of Education Child Nutrition Program. Community Eligibility Provision Local Education Agency Agreement. This agreement would be between the Rhode Island Department of Education and Charahoe, covers the period beginning October 1st through June 20th, and allows Charahoe to participate in the community eligibility provision for child nutrition programs that serve our students breakfast and lunches at no charge for 4 successive school years. Costs that exceed federal funding are the responsibility of the LEA and allows the LEA to forego collecting free and reduced price meal applications while participation in the CEP. This, I am recommending approval, and Mr. Zenian can add any additional context if you would like it.
So moved.
Any questions?
So in a nutshell,
Go ahead, Greg.
so it just was, explain it, we get federal, state money.
So the state of Rhode Island moved this year, any schools that have above 25% free reduced lunch, you could go to a program that would feed your whole building for free.
Oh.
So you get reimbursed at the rate of $2.84 for breakfast for the kids that would be free. Right now, CalAR has 50.7% of their students on free lunch, so we would be reimbursed to $2.84 for breakfast and then $4.43 for lunch for those students. in turn, we would pay for the other 49%. I
This
ran.
is just for Cal.
This is just for
Oh,
Cal.
okay.
So I ran the numbers for worst case scenario, which would mean none of our kids that currently free lunch were to take lunch.
Right.
We would still have to pay for the 49%. So for the school year, it would cost the district just under $3,500. So that is the worst case scenario.
But unlikely. that
Very
they take lunch every
unlikely,
day.
that the current students that are eating free lunch every day will stop eating.
Right.
And with what we would be subsidized, we would more than break even.
And we
and
could
then-
actually make a profit.
But it would also have a building where you're not worried about collecting the money
Right.
and you're just
And the kids
you're
can
being
just-
reimbursed from
Right.
the state.
Okay, thank you.
Polly, you had your hand up.
Well, I think besides going as far as asking what the poverty rate is in the Cala school, which we don't really need to know, because I had honed in on it had to be 25% or greater to get this grant. So I think you answered it.
She said
Without-
50.7 are eligible for school lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. What you're asking relates to my question, which was how do you determine the eligibility for free and reduced lunch? Is it based on applications or is it based on?
So no, they can also receive it through, so there's a new formula that the state uses around SNAP benefits and other categories. But to be considered an applicant for free and reduced lunch, you have to meet the criteria. Typically, now it's on SNAP. It used to be around meal application and overall income. But there's a nice, I can send it to you, a nice beautiful report of millions of pages of explaining why that was not in anyone's best interest anymore.
Okay, and you said it was 50.7% that are eligible.
That's
Or that
what the
meet that
state gave
requirement.
us for our current
For
numbers
Cal,
to say
okay.
we qualified.
Yeah, I think it's, great. I think hopefully it helps increase attendance too, as a side benefit to offering free meals for everyone.
Any other questions? All right, those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
Next item is our art education grant, the Rhode Island Department of Education Memorandum of Agreement for the Arts Initiative, Act 2, School Building Authority Capital Fund. We received from RIDE $106,663 to support our arts education at Charahoe. They awarded $5 million in grant money across the state. Your allocation was based on your enrollment, and I am recommending approval.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? There is a piece of paper that is gonna go around if we approve this, that everyone will have to sign. Yes.
Oh, sure, I can. The total was $106,663. You're welcome.
Anna, yes, if you, I'm sorry, you're supposed to go up to the microphone, so I appreciate it. No, that was inequitable of me, I apologize.
Hi, I'm just curious if the funds for this, was it an arts grant?
Arts.
Arts grant, if that would be divided evenly amongst the schools, if the art programs that are currently in place at the schools would still be able to be, if those funds would help fund the arts programs that are already in place in the schools. I'm just wondering if we're approving an arts grant, there wouldn't be a chance that any arts programs would be cut, right?
So this is not about, this is about enhancing our arts initiative. So for example, some of the items are like, we have, 3 old kilns at the high school, so we need to replace a kiln. So this is more about the needs of your arts initiative, like the sound systems and things like that. So when you say cut, I'm not.
I'm thinking of I'm thinking of programs and you're talking more like supplies, I guess.
Well, this is not, this is to enhance our current arts programs, not to add arts programs.
Are there any arts programs being taken away?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's budget season and and it can happen anytime. Like, I always use the world language as an example. It was never brought up by me, but it came up and it went away during the budget. So right now, I don't have any cuts for arts.
So the Hope Valley play is not being cut this year?
That's I have no idea. The Hope Valley, if that was in their budget, it's not cut by me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not aware of any.
Another question?
Sorry, I also have a scratchy voice today. Sorry, guys. So Jessica Swade for Bashaway. Do you guys have a list of what is going to be provided under this arts grant? Because I can tell you there are things that my daughters who are, my other one graduated, sorry, used to it. My daughter who is in the art program, there was a problem that had come up a couple of years ago that they weren't aware that they could have applied for funding for the outfits that they wore at concerts. They had been using the same outfits for ever. So is that going to be something that can be added to the program?
So so what happens is that the music teachers, our art teachers, along with our humanities specialists, Dana Hall, meet and review with Dr. Camella the needs of overall for the district, and then come up with an itemized list for the dollars. Our first grant, I want to say, we did a lot of work around, you saw a lot of it invested in the artisty kinds of applications. The lighting, the brand new lighting in the middle school auditorium, so we can actually see. I know a lot of the performing arts is requesting around the seating, which we may be able to do in the bond. So we're balancing the needs of the overall arts and musical programs with the needs of, and now that we have the bond, so balancing that, we're working with RIDE. But this is determined with our teachers. This is not my decision or Dr. Camella's decision. We work together.
Oh, no. It was more because there was a new hire teacher. She wasn't aware at the time. It was just an oversight, but she wasn't aware that she could have applied for new, I don't know what you actually call them, like the new attire for chorus.
Yeah, and that's in her, well, and then again, it's learning how to even, her budget, but yes,
so that's
Ms.
the other
Hall
thing.
is assisting her with her.
Okay, good. Yeah, because it would be nice if they had their own clothes. Kind of a big thing.
Thank you. There are other questions? No? Okay, we're ready to vote. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. So I'm going to pass.
Catherine's not there, right? So-
Yes.
Okay. The next item is our REAMA State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program. Katie Karakosian and Sean Cole are working together to secure this grant, which will be upwards of $30,000. It's due by November 20th. It needs to be approved for us to move forward, and will assist us in the statewide mandates regarding the cybersecurity. Myself and Sean Cole actually have a large state meeting with the U.S. Department of Education regarding cybersecurity in December. I recommend approval.
So moved.
Questions? Yes, Laura.
What are the cybersecurity, the specific, that's an umbrella? What exactly does it cover?
Typically, it's, the multi-factor authentication, it's the firewalls, the background, all of the, if you look at our WISP policy, it's all of the indicators that required through our audit to be in compliance with the law.
Okay, and is that for just educators, or is it for the students' laptops and stuff as well?
It's for everybody.
Everybody, okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Do you have any kind of figure that you spend on cybersecurity yearly?
It's more than this.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering.
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about is being able to utilize these funds for things that we were planning to do because we're required by the state. It actually will assist us and alleviate some of the need, because our budget is already over in our healthcare, so this provides us a little bit of a support.
Okay.
Yes.
Will this fund some of the training that's required by the state as well?
That's a great question. That is what they're working with, as part of the questions, and what opportunities that we have that we can work off of that they'll fund. But it's very likely. Some of the training is about messages, like through the email, to see if people click on phishing messages, they'll get an alert that says, this was a phishing message, here's a module we would like you to review.
We do all that stuff. Yeah, it's probably track of the event.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Other questions? All right, those in favor? It's unanimous as well. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is Education Northwest Grant for their State Action Collaborative for the High School Alternatives, funded by Annie E. Casey Foundation of $10,000. This is a support grant that is being requested by CALA to support their redesign work. You received a draft of that actually has been revised and reviewed all weekend long because it's due. But we gave you the draft so you would have the big context. We didn't change any of the big picture. It was more about making sure we were writing it at an asset mind versus a deficit mind. So I am recommending approval of the grant for $10,000.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry. Questions? All right. Those in favor? That is unanimous as well. Thank you.
Next steps as they relate to the phase out of Hope Valley Elementary School. I have not received any additional questions or follow-up from any committee members, so I have nothing for this agenda item unless there's members at the table that would like to have a conversation regarding, right now we are still planning, I am planning the budget with the original phase out of kindergarten from this year, and then it will be no first grade because we have no kindergarten. That's how we are planning for our budget.
Tyler.
I use the normal thing.
So I've asked for this a few times, going back to earlier last year or this year, earlier this year. Should the committee decide to hasten that timeline of closure of Hope Valley School, I think it would be a disservice to the members of the community if we didn't put forth the full plan of what that would look like. And let me explain by what I mean by full plan. You know, we've heard for a while now that we have room in the district to move all these kids to other schools. We have room in classrooms. What I think would be helpful to the committee members here and members of the community is to see what that plan looks like. And what I mean by that is Johnny in 3rd grade or in 2nd grade in Hope Valley is gonna go to Richmond. He's going to be in Miss Susie's classroom, which is now going to have 19 kids instead of 18 kids. Like, we need to be able to tell parents exactly what's going to happen, what classrooms sizes are going to look like, what classrooms are going to be utilized, and if we have that space.
We did that last month. Committee member Purcell requested it, and we did the presentation. Those enrollment figures, and not by Miss Susie's class, we just told you by, let's say there's 4 classrooms and the numbers that would be in those classrooms. I can reshare.
Could you reshare that,
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
Thank you. I missed that. My
No
apologies. Thank you. That's what I'm.
So what we did too was we used the district lines
No.
and we basically.
Yeah, because you've already done all that work already, and I get that. Okay, excellent.
So going forward, what could upset the apple cart here as far as where kids end up going, such as something like a big development in a given town in a given 10 years from now or whatever? Could that really alter the landscape of where kids go? I'm just curious, what's going to impact the decision the administration's going to have to make to reshuffle the deck when that time comes?
So right now, that decision is based on what, if you all change your mind. Right now, you've told me the phase out, so that's the way we're planning. We have to do an updated enrollment study because we have to have a 5-year capital improvement plan for elementary, because when the bond didn't pass, we no longer have that plan. So we're only under emergency reimbursements until we finalize the plan. As you know, you need an architect and OPM. We have to be able to allocate that money to the elementary facility planning. I don't know if RIDE allows us to use our capital dollars to do that, we could do that. If not, then we have to wait for this budget to be able to put it there. That's about $1.5 million, because the will of the committee originally was they wanted to see a renovation plan. That costs a lot more money than new, because of the fact that you don't know what you're going to uncover, as we just recently found out in our Charlestown Elementary School, which was no surprise. But in the end, for me, the only thing that's going to change is if you change your minds. For all of you, there's a lot more conversation if you do, because we were asked to plan the budget. We're planning it moving forward with the phase out. Come budget season, no surprise that the state's mandating the science curriculum. We just had a well-deserved and needed increase in our ESP contract. Our teacher negotiations are going to begin in January. So every contract vendor has increased their rate at minimum 3%, some more at 5%. So what the slide that Dr. Camilla showed you today about the per pupil expenditure, you are going to see some more of that on the financial dashboard that's live and public to be able to show you that our expenditures, the only way to reduce our budget is to increase class size, to cut educators, or cut staff, or cut programs. That's the, you'll see that we spend, 3% on supplies. It doesn't exist. The money is lean. I know Mr. Zenian is finding out really fast. We're very lean. And I know people want to say that we're not, but it's not true. And with the aging facilities, it only puts more pressure on us now because RIDE is not going to reimburse dollars if we don't have a plan. And if we do a renovation plan, they're going to expect that that building be used for at least 20 more years, or they will not reimburse.
I'm asking this specific question due to the fact that I'm gonna throw just a hypothetical out there. I live in Charlestown. I'm assuming kids in the Shannick area, the kids in the Alton area are gonna be going to Charlestown Elementary School in the
We already
future.
started that.
Right, so with that being said, my point is, what's gonna happen when demographics really change? I mean, we don't have control over what the towns do. And I keep hearing about this, Hopkinton wants to build a big development.
So for us, because we're regional, and I get it, it's, we don't look at it as a town by town because we look at overall our elementary schools. We had talked about even name changes because people get so caught up in the elementary school being named for their town. But overall, now, do we have space? Sure. Is it lovely? No. I mean, we upkeep it, but it's not, our elementary schools are not created for 21st century learning. They're just, they were built back
But
in
these
the
new
30s.
elementary districts per se, they're gonna keep evolving. That's my point.
Right, so
they're
what
gonna
you-
constantly evolve.
Yep, you do the enrollment studies and then you shift your district lines. So the enrollment studies go 10 years out to predict.
I just wanted people to hear that.
Understood. And like I said, we do have to do an updated enrollment study because we still need to do our elementary planning.
Other questions or comments? Nope. All right, thank you.
Okay, next item is Town of Hopkinton's proposal for the 1904 building site plan, updates relating to the new communication that we received. We had a special meeting last week to have some conversations around next steps. We urged you to reach out to Town Manager Brian Rosso with any questions, and we did feel like at our last meeting, we were able to get to sort of an agreement that, to let the legal, our lawyers sort of talk through a lease agreement. But I believe with this is not about the lease agreement. This is about the proposal for what they want to do on the site plan. So this is where I'll let, Brian, do you want to speak?
Sure. So I think at this point, we've covered a lot of our bases, but certainly happy to answer any questions. Try to keep it short. I know you guys got a big agenda tonight and probably sick of hearing me talk at this point, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that we didn't cover the last couple school committee meetings.
I mean, I think we have had a robust conversation about this, so unless anybody has any lingering questions, then now is the time. Otherwise, I think we can probably move forward. And I apologize, I was about an hour off in my estimation of when we were going to talk about this, so I tried, but I failed. But does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I'd just like to make sure when we make the motion, we say, we mention that there's the lease agreement that's being worked out. This is contingent upon the lease agreement.
Why don't you go ahead and make that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
and I think I'd like to bring up what Mr. Lozano asked about the MOA, and Brian knows this. One of my concerns is that if we do have to encroach on the area for whatever reason, that we sort of have an understanding and we can let the lawyers sort of work out what that looks like, but I would include that there's an agreement between the town that surpasses us, maybe, of how that's handled if it ever has to come to be.
Okay.
So who wants to take a shot at the? Go for it, Jessica.
I make a motion that we approve the town of Hopkinton's plan for the 1904 site building, contingent upon seeing a lease agreement that also includes a
Memorandum.
Some form of
MOA about
MOA.
site use in the future.
That's good.
That was lovely.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
So before I second that, which I will, I think we want to be careful about making sure that the lease agreement doesn't include the MOU.
That's true too, yeah.
The lease agreement and the MOU need to
Are
be
separate
are separate documents.
That's the way I understood it, but when I
Okay,
read it
that
back.
wasn't quite the way I understood it, but I just want to make sure that we have that.
So restate it, Jess.
Should we let them?
I don't know if I can.
You got it, Craig? Madam Chair,
Yes,
can we,
Angela can help.
someone enlighten us the difference between an MOU
Yeah,
and an MOA?
Memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement.
I know, but what's the difference?
They're really the same. It's
Okay.
semantics.
Yeah,
Depends on the
it's
lawyer that you talk
semantics,
to.
in my opinion.
We want both.
Yeah.
No.
I'll second that motion.
So,
someone just repeat the motion so we can get the word
I was hoping you could repeat.
Motion to approve the Hopkinton Plan contingent on a lease agreement that includes an MOA for site use in the future.
That includes, so not
So
you.
not included, so you gotta take out and,
Conditional, yeah.
a lease
Yeah.
and an
And,
MOA, MOU, whatever you
Right,
want to call it.
and, that includes, a lease and an MOA.
Yes.
I guess my only question would be, what if the attorneys hash this out and they decide that the lease would, one of them wouldn't be necessary? Obviously, the lease is necessary, but if the MOU is not necessary because it is all encompassed within the lease agreement, right?
we
'Cause
put-
that was
could
kind
we
of
put
what I
if
thought.
necessary in parentheses.
Sure.
after the
If
MOU?
necessary, yeah, because I think that we should let Attorney Anderson, Attorney Seipel figure out the best documentation to basically get done what you guys want to get done, whether that is an MOU and a lease agreement or just a lease agreement. We'll let them hash that out, but I don't want to, pigeonhole us where we have to have both because that was the motion. I think we want to make sure that if they can encompass everything that you want to accomplish and both sides are trying to accomplish within one document, we could do that.
Can we repeat it then? Motion to approve the Hopkinton 1904 building site plan that includes a lease and an MOA if necessary for site use in the future.
Second?
Thank you, Tyler.
any further discussion? Those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank
There
you.
we go. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
I am recommending approval of the budget transfers as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Of the transfers?
The budget update was actually listed in the reports, but it is there. You didn't find it. I have my copy. I'm happy to share, but that's just the typical budget update. Mr. Champlin, would you like Mr. Zenian to give you the high-level overview? Perfect. So that I don't have to recommend that. I'm going to right over to consent agenda
I see.
Pardon?
for budget transfers.
Yeah. Who made the motion for budget transfers?
I think it was Craig.
I think it was Craig, so
Thank
Craig,
you.
And seconded by Karen.
Thank you. And then I appreciate-
We're trying to race each other.
doesn't matter.
No, I-
Doesn't matter.
Budget update?
And
We
budget
don't
update
need-
is just
we
a
don't need a
discussion.
motion.
Yep. No, we didn't need it. The letter is there.
We'll slow down.
Consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be pulled?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
A3 and A4, please.
Okay. Only 3 and 4?
Oh, 3 and 4.
Yes. So,
Anybody else? Anything else? Matt? Madam Chair,
yes.
I make a motion to move the remainder, but before I do, I want to acknowledge some donations. One, from Richmond Sand and Stone, dug out, excavated, cleared, and leveled the side of the greenhouse at Richmond Elementary School. The value of this in-kind donation is $1,800. Additionally, the boys' cross-country team, along with Coach Havrak, came to rake, level, and clear the leftover stones and brick pieces and shoveled many yards of compost to the prepared area so that trees and bushes could be planted. Two, a community member donated items to the computer technology program at Charahoe Technical Center valued at approximately $250. Three, the Richmond Grange donated dictionaries to our grade 3 students at Richmond Elementary School. Value of this donation is approximately $250. Four, Quaney Farms of Charlestown donated cider donuts, focaccia bread, candied apples, floral bouquets, valued at $250 to the Project Scales pop-up shop at the Charahoe School homecoming game. 5, Spring Hill Sugar House of Richmond donated gourds valued at $50 to the Project Scales pop-up shop at the Charahoe High School homecoming game. 6, local artist Ms. Sharon LaFabre of Wyoming, Rhode Island, donated art supplies to the Charo High School Art Department.
Second.
Those in favor of the consent agenda? Don? Yeah.
Thank you, that's unanimous. We need to do 3 and 4. Can somebody make a motion to approve number 3? Executive session minutes of October 22nd.
Oh, sorry, that was my
Okay.
problem. I should have done that.
That's okay.
I make a motion.
Perfect.
Second.
Those in favor?
Third.
And those abstaining. Thank you.
Madam Chair, make a motion to approve A4 regular session minutes of October 22nd, 2024. I recommend
That's good.
the approval of the executive session minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so moved. For a second.
Those in favor? And those abstaining. Thank you.
All right, reports. Okay. Subcommittee reports, the Transportation Subcommittee minutes from 11/13/24 are enclosed. The Policy Subcommittee minutes from September are enclosed again as a reminder, as they were already presented at the October meeting. And for my report this evening, it's to highlight our student interns. So we are thrilled to announce that the USDA Scales Grant has propelled Charahoe's Farm to School initiative to exciting new heights, powered by the creativity and dedication of our incredible Charahoe High School and CTC interns. This groundbreaking program is focused on growing, sourcing, and delivering more local foods to our students, with our talented interns leading the way. This semester, 8 dynamic students from a variety of pathways, such as business, health careers, performing arts, hospitality, agriculture, early childhood, graphic arts, and drafting and engineering, will be involved over the next 2 years. There will be 40 paid internships available to our students that will bring innovation and real-world experiences to our farm to school vision. Since September, these interns have already accomplished amazing milestones that include hosting our first ever pop-up shop at our homecoming, featuring lettuce grown at Richmond Elementary School, decor crafted by our welding students, and many other fabulous items. Launching a Did You Know campaign to educate students about school meals. Building and installing hydroponic towers. Co-authoring an implementation grant to expand this initiative. Planning our first Indigenous brunch for lunch event. Conducting cafeteria efficiency audits, and engaging with community members in weekly working group meetings. Their energy, their ideas, and hard work have been instrumental in making this vision a reality. We can't imagine this journey without their invaluable contributions, and we are excited for what's ahead.
Excellent, thank you. Coming events.
I would just like to highlight some this weekend. I hope you can come out and watch The Giver, our performing arts pathway, and our many students will be doing a fabulous job this weekend. Our first production will be Friday night, and then we have our Saturday and Sunday productions. And then also to highlight, we have our the Winter Band Concert, which is December 11th. So we hope you will review all the coming events, but those are 2 highlights coming up.
Excellent. School committee requests for future agenda items or legal opinions. Somebody have any?
So
Yes.
I don't necessarily think it's a future agenda item, but Gina, I'm looking at the future meetings, right? Right, and below the
Yeah.
future
And actually,
meetings.
that's usually December 17th.
It is.
It is the 17th.
Correct.
I see the 28th, we have a budget workshop. I know, Craig, did we ever get anywhere about bringing back the 4 budget workshops? I know we had talked about it, and I just don't think that ever got any traction and went anywhere, right?
I put the request out.
Okay.
We never discussed it.
So now, with that being said, I would like to request a future agenda item, if possible, for the December 17th meeting, to be the reinstatement of at least 1 or 2 of those budget workshops, because I do think they are invaluable to the process, and I know we had cut them out. I think it was last year, was the first year we didn't do them, or maybe it was the year before, I don't remember fully. But I think they add a lot of value to us, I think, as a committee.
Right, do you remember, I just want to remind everybody, you do also talk about the budget, not just at these meetings, but every meeting following up.
Understood, but those are also regular meetings where there's a lot of other stuff on the agenda.
So Gina, the reason why I requested is because some of the budget workshops rolled up into regular school committee meetings. And I didn't feel that we gave it, It's due diligence.
Agreed.
Plain and
I
simple.
couldn't agree more with that.
Now, do I want to spend more time with you folks? Absolutely, I do. I look forward to this every single month, but no, I really think we need to focus a little more on the budget.
Can
and
I-
to-
can
And to
I-
do our job.
Can I just offer, since I'm leaving? Fine, I agree with it, but you gotta do something, because one of the
Yes.
reasons we cut it is because
Thank
nobody
you.
did
Agreed.
anything for 2 of the meetings, and we just sat there
Right.
stagnant for 45 minutes, looking at each other, and nothing happened. So I would just urge you to, if you add them, do
Right, and
something.
then we also included the budget subcommittee, which was an ongoing committee to be able to support the additional questions. So we incorporated the budget subcommittee and review, so and remember, starting in January, I mean, budget conversations are starting.
I know.
And I'm happy to put it on and you guys can vote on it. This is feedback too from our families and community, that they get stressed because we have meetings and then nothing happens until the very last meeting.
Yeah, that sucks for everybody involved. Linda?
I just want to make a comment, and I'm sure we'll discuss it on the 17th, but then we all need to make a commitment that we're going to be in attendance too, because that happens that we would have not a full attendance, and then we'd go to the second budget meeting, and then we'd have to reiterate what we did in the prior one because people weren't. And I know it's hard. I know everybody's got lives, and that's why I think maybe less is better, but that's my 2 cents.
And if we feel we accomplished everything in 3, then so be it.
Let's just say,
But it's better to at least plan for 4 than.
Right.
Well, like I said, just my 2 cents. We've been here 5 years, different committees,
Yeah.
and the decisions get made in March. So it's a lot of time, and I mean, Greg and I are here, so it's like, we're always in the budget, but it's just a lot of time for people to make no decisions or no movement, and then everything happens at the last meeting in March.
So put on a future agenda. I'm sorry, there are other hands up. Future agenda. Laura?
I wanted to add the homework policy as a future agenda item.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else? All right.
Madam Chair, before I make a motion to adjourn, I just want to say thank you again. Listen, in all honesty, she could tell you the story someday when we're both not sitting here, but if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be sitting here. She got me involved, I don't know, 10 years ago, we started having the conversation. So with that being said, Catherine, thank you again, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor? All right, thank you, everybody.